Welcome, my friends, to the Sleepy Archaeologist. Tonight, we will embark on a peaceful journey to a place where the echoes of history still linger, the ancient burial site of Sutton Hoo. Imagine the soft winds whispering over the grassy hills of Suffolk, England, where in the year 1939 the earth revealed a collection of remarkable artifacts hidden beneath the soil for over a millennium. Here, the past and the present dance together in a quiet, timeless rhythm. Sutton Hoo is a site that has captured the imaginations of historians and archaeologists alike. Nestled in the tranquil countryside near the River Deben, these burial mounds have stood for centuries, silent guardians of a long-lost world. Tonight, we'll explore the secrets they hold and take a step back in time to when these mounds were raised and the people who lived and died in the shadow of these hills. Let your mind wander as we discover how, in 1939, an excavation began that would forever change our understanding of Anglo-Saxon England, a time of kings and warriors, a time of legends and rituals. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the journey to Sutton Hoo begin. Part 1. The Discovery. Our story begins on a quiet estate in Suffolk, England. The land, with its rolling hills and sprawling green meadows, hides something much older, much deeper than what meets the eye. These mounds, known locally for generations, their origins a mystery, have stood for centuries, perhaps even millennia, bearing witness to the past. In 1939, a determined archaeologist named Basil Brown was invited by Edith Pretty, the landowner of Sutton Hoo, to investigate the mounds on her property. Edith, a woman with a deep curiosity about the past, had long been fascinated by the mounds and suspected that something significant lay beneath. Basil Brown, though not a formally trained archaeologist, was a self-taught expert with a keen sense for uncovering the secrets of the earth. With his tools in hand, Basil began carefully digging into Mound 1. At first, there were only hints, small fragments that suggested something larger might be hidden deeper beneath the surface. Slowly, Basil unearthed more. The excavation was slow, quiet, and methodical, and then something extraordinary happened. The earth gave way to a large wooden structure, a ship buried long ago, and with it, clues to a world long forgotten. The ship was 27 meters long, a grand vessel of wood and iron, clearly built for someone of great stature. As the ship slowly came into view, Basil's excitement must have been palpable, but even he, with his deep knowledge of archaeology, could not have known how monumental this discovery would become. Beneath this ship, resting in a burial chamber, lay the impression of a figure, likely a king, a warrior, or someone of immense power. While no actual remains were found, there is evidence that a body was present. The acidic soil conditions at the site caused the complete decay of organic materials, including the skeleton, which had now vanished to time. However, the outline of a body was visible in the soil, and soil samples confirmed the presence of phosphate, indicating the decomposition of human remains. Part 2. Unveiling the Artifacts. As the ship burial was uncovered, it became clear that this was no ordinary find. Among the remnants of the ship, which had decayed over time, but had pressed the outline of its hull into the earth like a shadowy skeleton, a wealth of artifacts came to light, glimmering pieces of history that had been sealed away for centuries. Among the most striking discoveries was the famous Sutton Hoo helmet. Crafted with intricate designs, it was a symbol of both power and protection. The helmet was not just ornamental, it was functional, a piece of armor for battle. It carried the history of the Anglo-Saxon world in its every detail. The craftsmanship was stunning. Depictions of animals, intertwining patterns, and the fierce, protective face that adorned the front. It was a piece of art, yes, but it was also a piece of history, a window into the world of warriors and kings. Alongside the helmet, other objects emerged from the earth, fragments of armor, shields, and swords, all expertly crafted. These were the tools of a great leader, a warrior prepared for battle and honor. But these objects were not just weapons, they were symbols of a culture that valued strength, courage, and the continuity of the warrior class. They told a story of a time when leaders were buried with their most precious possessions, meant to accompany them into the afterlife. Among these items were also a gold belt buckle, intricately designed with geometric patterns, and a beautiful set of silver spoons. These objects spoke of wealth and status, but also of a culture rich in artistry and craftsmanship. They gave us a glimpse into the Anglo-Saxon world where art and warfare coexisted side by side. One of the most amazing artifacts uncovered was the shield, which had been carefully decorated with elaborate patterns, indicating that this was no ordinary shield. It was a shield fit for a king, perhaps the very shield used by the leader, whose remains rested in the ship burial. Despite the breathtaking discoveries, there was skepticism, especially from larger institutions like the British Museum. Initially, they were doubtful that the ship was truly Anglo-Saxon. At the time, the British Museum had a firm belief that such grand ship burials could only belong to the Vikings. The idea of an Anglo-Saxon king being buried in such an elaborate manner seemed far-fetched. They also scoffed at Basil Brown for being self-taught. However, Basil Brown, the dedicated archaeologist, was not dissuaded by this skepticism. Basil's persistence paid off. As more artifacts came to light and the evidence continued to point toward the Anglo-Saxon period, he convinced the skeptics that Sutton Hoo was indeed a site of monumental importance. After a while, it was impossible to deny Basil was right. The discovery was Anglo-Saxon. Over time, the British Museum came to recognize the significance of the find, and Basil Brown's careful work was finally acknowledged. His determination, even in the face of doubt, was crucial to unveiling the full historical value of Sutton Hoo. The news of the discovery was widely reported in the British press at the time. The Daily Mail excitedly described the helmet, a gold helmet encrusted with precious stones, and later more accurately as elaborate interlaced ornaments in silver and gold leaf. These early reports highlighted the significance of the discovery even before all artifacts had been fully examined. Today, many of the remarkable artifacts discovered at Sutton Hoo are displayed for the public to see and admire. The British Museum in London houses the most notable items, including the famous Sutton Hoo helmet, the sword, and other burial items, which are now part of the permanent collection. They stand as enduring reminders of the Anglo-Saxon era, providing an invaluable glimpse into a world that existed more than 1,000 years ago. Visitors can marvel at these artifacts, and in doing so connect to the long, rich history of the British Isles. Part 3. The Legacy of Sutton Hoo. As we continue our journey through Sutton Hoo, let us pause for a moment and imagine what life might have been like in the early 7th century when the ship was first buried. Picture a small Anglo-Saxon village. The air is filled with the sounds of everyday life, people working at the hearths, blacksmiths shaping metal into tools and weapons, and the clinking of shields and swords being prepared for battle. The Anglo-Saxons were a group of tribes who migrated to England from what is now modern-day Germany, Denmark, and the Netherlands. Their migration began around the 5th century, following the decline of the Roman Empire in Britain. These tribes arrived in waves, settling in different parts of England over several centuries. By the early 7th century, they had established several kingdoms in England, such as Wessex, Mercia, and Northumbria. Their culture, language, Old English, and system of governance became the foundation for what would later become medieval England. The Anglo-Saxon period is generally considered to have lasted from around the 5th century to the Norman conquest of England in 1066. This period saw the development of early English society, the spread of Christianity, and the creation of monumental artifacts and historical sites like Sutton Hoo that continue to shape our understanding of early British history. The Anglo-Saxon world was one of warriors, kings, and deep religious beliefs. In this world, the act of burial was as important as life itself. The burial of a leader was not just a personal affair, it was a reflection of the community's respect and reverence for the dead. In Sutton Hoo, we see a glimpse of this culture, where the dead were honored with elaborate graves filled with possessions meant to accompany them on their journey to the afterlife. As we think about the identity of the person buried at Sutton Hoo, many scholars believe this might have been the burial of King Raedwald of East Anglia, though this remains a topic of debate. What we do know is that the grave was built for someone of great significance. The artifacts left behind, tools of war, symbols of status, and intricate art tell us much about the world these people inhabited. Sutton Hoo offers more than just a glimpse into the past. It also challenges what we know about early Anglo-Saxon England. The discovery revealed that the Anglo-Saxons were not isolated from the rest of the world. They traded with distant lands, as evidenced by the materials used in the artifacts: glass from the Mediterranean, metalwork that suggests contact with the Byzantine Empire, and items that point to connections with Scandinavia. Sutton Hoo is not just a local burial site. It is a link in a larger network of cultures, a reminder of the interconnectedness of the early medieval world. Final thoughts, the echoes of the past. As we close our eyes tonight, let us think about the silent graves of Sutton Hoo, where the echoes of a long-lost world still whisper in the wind. The artifacts uncovered remind us that history is not just something written in books. It is something buried deep within the earth, waiting to be uncovered. Every piece of pottery, every scrap of metal, and every piece of cloth is a fragment of a larger story. A story that stretches back to a time when kings were buried with their armor, their shields, and their wealth, not for riches, but to ensure they had what they needed in the next life. As we rest tonight, let us reflect on the timeless nature of human history. It is not just the grand tales of kings and queens that shape our world, but the quiet, forgotten moments, the tools, the shields, and the stories of the people who came before us. May you dream of distant lands and ancient ships where the past is never truly gone, but always waiting to be rediscovered piece by piece, like the artifacts of Sutton Hoo. And with that, as the night deepens, so too does our connection to the past, ever present and ever quietly beckoning us forward into the future. And so now, as you sail away to sleep, I bid you good night, dear friends, from the Sleepy Archaeologist.